Hello, we're delighted to be with you this morning on Heaven and Earth while Gloria takes a short break.
We've got a great show today with some big stories, some famous faces and a panel of lively studio guests to help us put it all into perspective. Get
Come on,
lively, guys.
Look lively. So let's take a look at what's coming up this morning.
But first, the story of a Christian family who are fighting moves to send them back to their Muslim homeland. Pakistan is a country of 160 million people, and just 2.5% of the population is Christian. Last week in Faisalabad, 5 Christians were charged under Pakistan's controversial blasphemy laws. And this week, the Catholic Times has claimed there is a wave of hatred against Christians in the country. Mary Rhodes has been to meet one family in Lancashire who say that they were forced to leave Pakistan after receiving threats from their own relatives. But now the British government says they must go back. Well, watching that film this morning were our Heaven and Earth panel. Let's welcome them. Roy Hattersley, Lord Hattersley, is the former deputy leader of the Labour Party and he's now a columnist for the Guardian newspaper. Jackee Holder is an interfaith minister and a leading light of the Mind, Body, Spirit movement. And Andrew Pearce is assistant editor of the Daily Telegraph. Now, Roy, the Karims are just one example of a number of families who are hiding in this country as a result, they say, of religious persecution in their own country. Does the system take them seriously enough, or are we failing them?
I think the system takes them seriously enough. I think it depends on the individual cases. It's very difficult to make a judgment on the evidence of, 2 or 3 minutes film, and the facts aren't all there, and I don't know what the facts are. I must say I'm very sceptical about the idea of Christian persecution in Karachi. I've been to a Christian mission in Karachi who was operating peacefully and quite happily.
This is their family persecuting.
Well, they're saying Christian persecution. That's the nature of the item on this programme. On the other hand, my views on asylum is I'd rather have one bogus refugee let's remain in the country than 10 genuine refugees be thrown out, or vice versa. So I'd always err on the side of generosity. But I think it's very difficult to make judgments on what we've seen today.
Well, the Home Office did actually have something to say. They said they can't comment on individual cases, but they said that the government was committed to providing protection for people genuinely in need, but it had to be able to enforce the return of asylum seekers who didn't require protection. Jackee, you work with asylum seekers sometimes. What do you think of this?
I think that, we can't underestimate what people's families' personal experiences have been, and the Karims have really, they obviously are under threat in terms of having to go back and not being able to practice their faith. I don't think we should underestimate that.
We could say that that's just a brilliant PR exercise to get the local community involved.
We could do. But, we've got too many examples of where there have been real experiences for families. And I think that we shouldn't underestimate what, they are actually saying, and that we would be responsible for actually sending them back.
Andrew, I have to ask you, there is a suspicion that if this family were Eastern European with £500 million in a bank account, the objection to their application might disappear. What do you think?
Well, I don't know. We've only heard one side of this story, but the fact is the asylum system here is out of control. We know that because no less a person than David Blunkett, when he was Home Secretary, told the House of Commons they've no idea how many asylum seekers have disappeared into the system. There's no proper system for monitoring it. It is a shambolic system, and I'm very sorry about that family. They seem to be very genuine, but the Home Office obviously has its reasons for deciding to send it back. It is obviously sceptical, as is Roy Hattersley, about persecution of Christians in Pakistan.
Yeah, it's interesting to get all these different opinions. We're going to be coming to you throughout the show. Lots of different stuff coming up. Thank you so far. Now, let's take a trip to any bookshop on the high street, and you'll find that within minutes you'll stumble across the Mind, Body, Spirit section, with dozens of titles telling us how to improve our lives. Self-help books are nothing new, but the industry continues to enjoy great success, with fresh titles constantly hitting the shelves. In the US alone, the self-help industry is estimated to be worth $10 billion. The latest book to enjoy phenomenal success is called The Secret. We asked Joe Mace to investigate. Joe Mace, they're not doing too well at discovering the secret. Back with us now are this morning's panel. Jackee, I wanted to turn to you first, because you actually really believe in this book, don't you?
Yeah, well, I think The Secret's good, because I think it does introduce us to the laws of attraction, and it is really important in terms of it's one aspect of our personal, our psychological and our spiritual development. And I think what it has done is it's brought very simple laws and ways of getting what you want and introduced it to the masses. And these are practices that lots of people have been using over time. And it's interesting for me because in my work as a life coach, I mean, I'm working with people around the principles of the laws of attraction. And whether people call it that or they call it something else, it has been one of the ways which some people have created what they wanted.
One of the phrases that comes up a lot is getting what you want.
Yeah.
OK, so Andrew, you and I, we both auditioned for a show in the West End, or we were on a talent show on TV. We both want to win. We both believe we're going to win. Is it going to happen?
Well, you'd win, I wouldn't win. You know, I could make a facetious remark, having read this book, and say I willed my horse to win the Grand National, but actually it fell at the first fence, which indeed it did. But actually, it's not funny, because this book is not funny. What this book does is blames the individual, absolutely, for floundering and failing. So, if you haven't got enough money coming into your household, it's your own fault for not having the right thought processes. So the thousands of people who lost their job in my dad's car factory in the bad old days of the 70s, it was their fault. If you don't think positive enough thoughts about your physiology, you are prone to illness. You get leukemia because you've not thought carefully enough. It also says, don't talk to people who are ill too much, because if they talk about their illness, it could make you ill too. And the other thing, I had to look in the mirror today to see if I was putting on weight, because it also said, don't spend too much time looking at fat people. The guy opposite me on the train yesterday was as fat as a house. Well, actually, I got on the scales this morning. Fortunately, I didn't put on weight, because it's hocus pocus.
Well, I want to ask you, if, for instance, you'd have had a vision board on which you'd have put a picture of number 11 Downing Street and the Cabinet Office, would you have not been Deputy Leader of the Labour Party? Would you have been Deputy Prime Minister? Is that where it went wrong?
I don't know where it went wrong. There's a number of explanations of how, we all know it went wrong, but there's a number of explanations about where it went wrong. I don't think, although this book asks for jokes to be made about it, I don't think it is a joke.
No.
I think it's a wicked book. I think it's a wicked book, if a book can be wicked, because it tells people things which are patently untrue and encourages vulnerable people to buy it and hope when there is no hope. I mean, on page 130, it tells you can think yourself cured of cancer.
Well,
There'll be hundreds, thousands of cancer sufferers who are going to die who spend their money on this book believing it gives them hope, and of course it's nonsense, it doesn't.
Jackee.
See, I look at it very differently. I think there's lots of people, if you have a health challenge, it's also about the way you respond to that challenge.
Can you be yourself cured of cancer?
No, but you might not be able to. But
Can
you
you?
might
Can
be
anybody?
able. You might be able to change the way in which you respond to what you're going through. And I think that's one of the
That's
things
not
that
what
the
the book
secret.
says.
That's a principle, isn't it?
That's not
That's
what
very
it says.
clear.
Yeah, but the secret, you see, what's interesting about this book is, like I said earlier, it introduces some interesting arguments, but it doesn't go all of the way.
But you are saying that coming from a perspective of someone who's done obviously a lot of self-help, you
Yeah.
understand that. If I'm a new person, I've never read anything, I've just got cancer,
Yeah.
I want to read this book, and now I've been told,
It's
my gosh, unless I
exploiting them.
think well enough, how am I going to,
I'll be fit in a fortnight. It's ridiculous.
Well,
It's exploitative, but also it's outrageous. It suggests if you don't think the right thoughts, you can be in the wrong place at the wrong time. So it implies if you were Jewish and you were in the concentration camp, it was your own fault for not thinking more positive thoughts. Nothing to do with the fact there was a madman called Hitler in Berlin who wanted to wipe them out.
Jackee, I still want to hear from you because you are positive about it. And
Yeah, I am positive about it because I think that with anything, people are going to interpret it in a particular way. There are some people who are going to take up the secret and they're not going to see it in that way. They're going to see it for the simple, practical tools that it's offering individuals.
Can I just ask you one thing? Obviously, you know, the book says that it relies on ancient spiritual principles.
Yeah.
And yet there are some things where it says, you know, you have to say, I love money and money loves me. Which religion or spiritual doctrine does the love of money belong to?
Well, the love of money comes from lots of different places. It doesn't particularly come from one particular tradition or religion. So I think, you know, for me, it's offering an opportunity for you to challenge your thoughts, challenge
This
your
has got something to do with religion. What sort of a God is it that helps people who think in the right way, but penalises people who don't think in the right way? What sort of
And it makes a
But we
point.
could do
in
with
America,
being more
but-
positive,
but no,
couldn't
in
we?
America,
Yeah, I think we can.
must think about why this is so popular in America. It makes the point in the book that most of the wealth of America is concentrated in the hands of 1% of people.
Yeah.
So, and it lauds that as a virtue. It lauds it as a virtue because they've thought positively. And this is a country, of course, where it's a bestseller, which has chosen George Bush twice as president.
But hold on, getting away from that, don't you think that even if people read the book and it just makes them more positive,
especially
that
in
that's a
Britain,
good
we need
thing?
more positivity.
It's
No.
delusional.
I don't see anything.
It's deluding
This
them.
is a bestseller. It's appealing to the masses. There are people who...
No, it's
Is it
exploiting
appealing
them.
to
No,
the
it
masses?
isn't. It
Exploitation.
isn't. They have plenty of examples of where this has impacted on individuals' lives. If it's not for you, it's not for you. That's entirely up to
Shouldn't for anybody.
There may be loads of other people who this book has had a powerful impact on.
Say one honest thing about the book. The book is meant to make money.
Yeah,
it's meant to sell to vulnerable people, and I'm astonished that a reputable publisher like Simon & Schuster should actually publish it in this country. I think it's a disgrace.
Do you find no redeeming qualities in the book
None
at all?
whatsoever.
I would call the author a charlatan.
Well, I wouldn't. I think there's lots of people, because there are examples of people, not just from this book's lie, but lots of, if you think about the number of self-help books that are out there.
But if a person believes they're going to move and they sell their house and all of that kind of stuff.
Would you mean
Because
person?
they think they're going to buy...
It tells you to dream about a mansion. Dream about a mansion.
House.
It'll be in your hand. It says it'll move the universe for you.
Yeah, but what's wrong with that? Maybe you might not get the mansion, but you might get something that is equally close to the mansion.
Only vulnerable people will believe such nonsense. Only vulnerable people will believe it and pay their money for it.
Can I tell you what? I have to say that I think as a country that's fairly addicted to self-help and becoming increasingly so, this is a discussion that's going to run and run. I think we're only just at the beginning of this.
Yeah, I think so.
I think maybe we need to all think a little bit more positive. Thanks for now.
All that stuff. And this is what's reflected in the book.
You mentioned there about the theology. Jackie, do you think that the church could begin teaching a slightly different theology because of this book?
I think it's interesting because I was sitting here thinking about, you know, what is my view on this. And I think what's interesting that Jeffrey Archer, whatever our personal views are on here, I'm not a fan of his, that it's given us a different take on Judas. It's given us an opportunity to perhaps think about the shadow side, the darker side of Judas and what went on for him. And I think that, you know, it gives us an opportunity to think about what were some of those aspects that may have been represented in some of the other disciples. I mean, there'll be lots of Christians that wouldn't actually agree with that, but I think it's interesting to explore that in a kind of new and modern way that's more relevant to people, and I think that's what people are looking for.
Fantastic. OK, brilliant. We're back with you guys later. Thanks. We'll be back with the panel in a few minutes.
Just time to put some of your comments to this morning's panel. We have had a real flurry of emails and voicemails. Firstly, on Christians in Pakistan. One from Joyce said, I hope and pray that this family is not deported. Many other asylum seekers with less to recommend them have not been allowed to stay. And there is something to say that actually these people are trying to do it legally. And there are lots of people who aren't and probably look at this and be discouraged from trying to do it legally.
That's my point. Asylum system is such disarray. It's often the good guys who they do shit back.
They're making, and the way the community's behind them, I think we need to acknowledge that.
With less to recommend them won't do, will it? Because there are rules about asylum, and there might be the best people in the world and be outside the rules. There might be the worst people in the world and inside the rules. You have to stick to the rules.
There is one here that picks up on something that you were saying, Roy. It says, have your panel seen the statistics and listened to the facts? Saying that Christians in Pakistan and other countries are not persecuted is ridiculous. Not long ago, in fact, this year, a church in Pakistan was targeted and many people were killed. There have also been riots with 100,000 people on the streets of Lahore this year against Christians and burning churches, etc. And some people have picked up on that. But the main thing that's got people going is The Secret.
Funny that.
Yeah, Jenny from Kent emailed and said, I don't see anything dangerous about this book. You see, the boys were ganging up on you, but the viewers aren't necessarily.
They had their view.
It's just another way of looking at life. Every day our newspapers promote negativity. Does the Telegraph do that? Overindulgence and greed. So a book like The Secret really shouldn't cause too much upset. Also, another text saying, thinking positive is a good thing. Whether you read The Secret, the message of being and thinking more positively makes people happier, and happier people make the world a better place.
Nobody's against thinking positive. Nobody's saying don't think positive.
Right,
we're just saying that
book
book is saying it's a panacea, and if you think positive and you're vulnerable and you're downtrodden, you're not going to be.
But
and it doesn't work
I
like
have
that.
an issue. I have an issue about people have to be vulnerable to read that book, and I think that your viewers are phoning in and they're saying that they're not vulnerable.
Okay, but one thing that somebody does say, which I think picks up also on this, is that Sandy from Cheshire said, this book's an opportunity to become aware that their positive thoughts can create reality. And I think this is where you and the, you know, Andrew and Roy digress.
Yeah.
They don't think that thinking something...
Simply wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is wrong.
So just thinking about something good can't necessarily make it happen.
Well, you've got to do something.
Right, now, Steve agrees with you. He said this book panders to the I want generation, the shallow people who only believe in a consumer lifestyle. Mick has said The Secret is microwave religion purely for instant gratification. And what do you think about that? What do you think about that, Jackee?
I don't agree with that at all, because if people are feeling positive, they're going to impact on the people around them. People want to do things for other people. They want to contribute. It changes individuals. It changes communities, and it creates greater good all around. How can you not want to contribute and do things for the better when you feel better about yourself?
Tells you to stay away from people who are in it.
No,
Tells
well,
you to do that.
Well,
this is going to rage. I know. But on that note, I want to move over to Shiku here, who's been drawing Judas. What have you got? Show us. Show us. Wow. The manga Judas. You know, Carrie said earlier you could be the new Rolf Harris. I mean, what do you think of this film?
Interesting.
Well, I think better than the new Rolf Harris.
Better, absolutely. A sinister Judas. Thank you very much, Shika. I tell you what, it's hard.
Would you have invited that man to the Last Supper? No.
No, definitely not. Gentlemen, thank you. And lady, of course, Jackee. Thank you very much. Shiku, thank you. Hopefully we're going to be seeing a lot more of this and the manga Bible. Carrie, over to you.